Fala, galera! Nós gravamos uma entrevista com o fundador, o CEO do IPOR, o Darren Camas. O Luciano, que é uma das pessoas mais envolvidas com esse protocolo no mundo, conseguiu essa entrevista com o Darren e ela foi super interessante. Ele contou a história dele. Esse cara morou em vários lugares do mundo, morou 6 anos no Chile, ele até entende um pouco de português. Então foi super interessante. E esse projeto ele começou já com um investimento até significante, pensando aí que nós não estamos num momento bom do mercado, acho que 5 milhões de dólares, né? Teve empresas já investindo aí como, né, na seed, né, Luciano?
Sim, Marcelo. O protocolo recebeu investimentos de VCs. Foi esse valor mesmo que tu falou, um total de 5 milhões e meio aproximadamente. E foi o capital utilizado para financiar o início das operações. Então, vai ser muito legal essa entrevista. É importante para quem está interessado no protocolo acompanhar, porque ouvir do fundador não tem nada melhor, né, do que o futuro do protocolo. Então, vamos lá, que tem bastante coisa hoje aí, né, Marcelo?
Exatamente. Lembrando, ó, esse mercado é o swap, é swap de juros, não é swap uniswap de trade. Então é bem interessante, ó. Quiser conhecer mais, direto do fundador aí para vocês. Hello, everyone. Today I have a very special guest here. It's Darren Camas. He's the founder and CEO of IPOR. It's a new DeFi protocol they're going to talk about. And I have Luciano Colombo here as well. Luciano is the guy who brought the protocol IPOR to my knowledge. And well, just start a very quick introduction from Luciano. Luciano, conta um pouquinho para a gente aí como que você conheceu esse novo protocolo, ainda que no Brasil, pelo menos, pouca gente conhece, como você se tornou um Iporian, né, e conseguiu aí tanto conhecimento e trazer o Darren para uma entrevista.
Bom, Marcelo, primeiro, obrigado pelo convite. Hi, Darren. A gente já conversou um pouco pelo Discord lá, do protocolo IPOR. Bom, na verdade, eu conheci o protocolo IPOR através de uma tese, assim, bem fundamentada de que derivativos vão ser o carro-chefe do próximo bull market. E a partir disso comecei a procurar protocolos em nichos específicos e acabei encontrando o IPOR com uma, uma mecânica muito legal que eu achei, com a questão de criar um índice para o mercado de DeFi, para crescimento do mercado de empréstimos e tal. Então comecei a ir atrás do protocolo, entender, entrei para a comunidade e, em seguida, a equipe do protocolo lançou uma espécie não seria uma competição, mas uma atividade para quem quisesse participar da comunidade formativa, falar sobre o protocolo, participar dos eventos, fazer transações no protocolo. Então, ia se ganhando XPs, pontos, para tu ir subindo os níveis dentro da comunidade. Então, até que foi o momento que eu me tornei um Emporium, e aí a gente começou a ir mais a fundo, conversar com a equipe lá, trouxe o protocolo para apresentar para a Academia Derivativos, e é isso. E daí eu falei com o Marcelo, a gente conversou de daqui a pouco trazer o Darren para conversar com o pessoal aqui, e a gente fazer algumas perguntas que a gente está ansioso aí. Então é isso. Vamos lá para essa live que tem bastante conteúdo.
Não, legal. Então, o Luciano tinha apresentado já para mim no ano passado. A gente trouxe para o pessoal da Academia Derivativos, né, da Academia Cripto, que é o nosso grupo fechado, né? E semana passada eu fiz uma live também com o Luciano aí sobre o IPOR. When Luciano brought this protocol to my knowledge, I found it very, very interesting because I was studying many derivatives protocols in crypto, and everything I was seeing was perpetual DEX, future DEX, option DEX. I was searching the swap market as well, because the swap market is incredibly huge in traditional markets. So when I discovered this protocol, I thought it was very interesting. And Darren, very welcome to accept our invitation to our Brazilian people to know more about the protocol directly from yourself. So can you give a introduction about yourself? How do you start in crypto, your experience, and how do you came with the idea, you and the team, about the IPOR?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, thanks for having me. Also, nice to see you on camera, Luciano. The first time that we've talked on video, but we know each other quite well from the IPOR Discord. And thanks for the invite. Luciano is one of, I think, how many we have? 12 IPORians, something like that, that are like the keepers of the crowd, and that's among, I think, 16,000 Discord members. So it's really the
12 in the world. 12 IPOR in the world.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, so far. But these guys are really, really stood out. So it's really also nice. It's a pleasure to, come in here. And, of course, Luciano, his invite means a lot to us. So I guess maybe a little bit about myself, background. I've actually been building in crypto for 11 years now, and actually started in Latin America. So we launched one of the first exchanges in the world out of an apartment building in Viña del Mar, Chile. And that was in 2011.
Wow.
And let's say that the whole crypto ecosystem has undergone many changes. It's grown many orders of magnitude since then. But there are some really nice, humble beginnings in South America. I lived in Chile for 6 years, so I speak Spanish fluently. I understand Portuguese. Eu falo muito pouquinho, pero entendo mais que falo. And now I live in Italy, so I have a lot of kind of Latin languages going on in the brain. So over 11 years, I've done a lot of different things. We had an exchange out of Chile. We also did a brokerage. In 2013, 2014, we were looking at some very early things, like some foundational pieces, like how can you do decentralized audit on chain? And this is something that you see that's really important now, as you have exchanges trying to prove the reserves now. And in 2022, 2023, we were doing some work on it. How could you do it at the cryptographic level in 2014? I did a payment business based on crypto between Latin America and China, and that's actually moved to China for about 5 years, and that was called BitNexo. It won BBVA, the startup challenge in Latin America in 2015 for most innovative seed stage startup, and that was just using the basic mechanisms of Bitcoin to do cross-border transfer. I was one of the first advisors to Cardano, so focused on layer ones. I've built out some security token infrastructure, and now at IPOR. So that's a little bit about the background, and then maybe actually, Marcelo, about your comment about the different derivatives. A lot of people are doing perps. A lot of people are looking at really speculative instruments because they want to bet on volatile assets. Actually, IPOR is at the other side of the spectrum. It's about the cash markets. It's about the credit markets and the kind of this base layer. So I think it's one of the missing pieces that we need for maturity inside of DeFi, right? So if you look at DeFi and people betting on leverage on the direction of Bitcoin, Ethereum, ERC20 assets, it's interesting, it's fun, it's a base. I mean, it's a first use case, but it's not really necessarily useful. And if you take TVL and you kind of divide it neatly, when Demeter and I, my co-founder, we were analyzing what the market needs, not what people are trading now, but we were trying to look 5-10 years in the future and say, okay, so if DeFi is to mature, what does it need? We split TVL very neatly down the middle in exchange and credit markets. And because everyone is already familiar with the exchange side and the perpetuals, and they wanted to be the decentralized, well, what was then FTX, BitMEX, Binance, all of these kind of levered exotic derivatives, then that's going to be a very crowded space. A really interesting kind of greenfield opportunity will be the derivatives and the base layer on the credit market side. And so that's what we focused on.
Yeah, very interesting, because I always see this lending platforms like Avi and Compound, and they are not very capital efficient, because you can, for example, deposit ETH and take a loan, but there is this variable and fixed for the stables. And it's very interesting how the IPOR goes exactly making Aave and Compound more efficient. I think this is brilliant. This is the protocol, the kind of thing that I was expecting for the next generation of DeFi. And when did you start to develop? When did you start with the idea of the IPOR?
Yeah, so it's actually just a little over 2 years old. So it started in conception right after DeFi summer. Demeter, again, my co-founder, and I, we were playing around with a lot of protocols, having a lot of fun. We were doing the fruit farming. We got rug pulled a couple of times. You really need to get this first experience to see what it's all about, to make mistakes, to understand the underlying, to understand the underlying mechanisms. We looked at what's probably going to fail, what's going to be successful, and what was needed. And again, that's how we came down to the derivatives on the credit market side. And also, that was 1 year before the discontinuation of the LIBOR. Well, the discontinuation of the LIBOR keeps getting pushed out and out and out. But a lot of the risk management pieces, they were looking at, okay, so what are some of the risks of the discontinuation of the LIBOR, and which benchmark rate will take the cake, which will really continue on, and that's really the SOFR now, the overnight financing rates, right, or the repo market. But what we were looking at and saying, okay, so let's start with the fundamentals on the DeFi, on the TradFi credit markets. The idea of a benchmark rate is extremely sound, right? So this is something that is, so if let's take a sidestep. So the LIBOR was discontinued because it was being manipulated inside by bankers, right? But it's really useful because it was being used to peg hundreds of trillions of dollars in deals, derivatives, credit instruments, right? And really another benchmark rate is taking over that. So you have this peg that is, or this benchmark rate, which is fundamental to build different credit markets, right? One, the cost of credit today, it in the future, or you have a prediction of what it will be in the future. And then you have different ways to trade that, right? So, if we look at, let's say if we're looking at Bitcoin, we're always speculating at what Jerome Powell's going to do, what the central bank's going to do. And they really have a lever, which is ratchet interest rates up, ratchet interest rates down. And we're in a high interest rate market in TradFi, which means high cost of credit, right? And that has had an adverse effect on DeFi, right? The rates have really gone down. So we've seen this, the cost of credit in DeFi go from very expensive to very cheap relative, right? But everything's tied to the credit markets and everything's tied to the interest rate. So we call IPOR the heartbeat of DeFi. Why the heartbeat of DeFi? Because it's essentially the beating heart of the DeFi credit markets. So it starts with a benchmark rate, and then on that benchmark rate, you can build other products and other protocols and other deals. So the first, let's call it the first product that references the IPOR are the IPOR interest rate swaps. It's a very short-term instrument now that will be extended out and out and out, so it becomes more useful. And then on top of the IPOR rates, we'll start launching other markets. We're talking about interest rate futures, fixed rate products, and this is all kind of setting this base layer of the DeFi credit markets.
Yeah, very cool. And how could you describe for a person who is seeing our video right now, and he probably knows a little bit of trading, perps, and why IPOR? How can I use it just in a simple way?
Yeah, so it really depends on your activity. So first of all, IPOR or interest rate swaps are typically TradFi instrument. They're typically large financial institution to large financial institution. This is why it's typically a $450 trillion notional market In 2020, it was over $600 trillion notional traded in interest rate derivatives because it's used to underpin global debt, right? So if you're a trader, this is maybe one of the first times that it's open to anyone outside of being a financial institution to be able to hedge your interest rate exposure. So for example, if you think the interest rate is going to go up, you go long, or on the swaps, you take a pay fixed, receive floating position. If you think the rate's going to go down, you take a receive fixed, pay floating position, right? So you're essentially taking a directional position against the interest rates. So you can take a directional position if you are speculating on the way that rates are going. But what's a typical use case of interest rate derivative is actually to hedge your interest rate risk. So you mentioned AVE, you mentioned compound. Let's say you're a borrower there, right? If the interest rate spikes there, it means that your cost of credit has gone up. So if you don't have any hedging on your exposure, it means that your cost of credit goes up. It means that your debt is more expensive, right? On the contrary, if you're a lender and the rate goes up, you're happy because you're earning more. But if it goes down, you lose future income. So these guys are always at different ends of the spectrum on a trade, right?
Yeah.
Now, let's look at like a very simple example. You know, most people can conceive a home loan. You go to the bank offers you a fixed rate or a floating rate. And if you have a fixed rate option for you, a lot of people will take fixed. Why? Because it means that they know every month this is what your cost of credit is into some certain time frame in the future. If you take the floating or the variable rate, it means that this month it can be low, the next month it can be high. And so, for example, 2 years ago, when the credit markets were where you could really get essentially free money, it would have been a very good time to take a fixed rate loan, because now you're talking 5-6%, you know, your cost of credit, and that can actually multiply your loan repayments or your mortgage on your house, right? So one of the functions of interest rate derivatives is fixing that rate. So if the bank offers you a fixed rate loan, they're going out to the market to source the credit, and they're using an interest rate derivative to hedge that rate risk and applying some spread. So the product that you get as a fixed rate mortgage holder, there's both a reference rate involved because your loan is being quoted on some off some benchmark, and some interest rate derivative. But this process is completely it's invisible to you as a consumer.
Yeah, and so I understand that the swap market, the traditional finance, is more for institutions, especially because it's OTC. It's not so easy for the regular people. But correct me if I'm wrong. But the IPOR is very simple to use. I mean, everyone can connect their wallet and easily make a swap and use the platform. So what was the main purpose that you thought? You're targeting potential institutions for the IPOR. It's retail or it's both?
So IPOR, I mean, it has a number of DeFi primitives, right? But it's also the belief in open finance or decentralized finance. It's there for anyone who is interested or able to use it for the different purposes, for speculation, for hedging, for arbitrage, right? So actually, let's break it down into two different players. So very similar to, like, let's say Uniswap, right? This is the peer-to-pool model, right? If you're going to trade on Uniswap, you get a quote and you take an exchange. You swap one asset for another, and that's against the pool. So the pool participants provide two assets. Let's say ETH and USDC, right? So this is pooled assets from a bunch of people, and the AMM, it quotes you your price, right? In a very similar way, you have a peer-to-pool model in IPOR. So if you're trading directional exposure, if you want to buy long exposure, or if you want to buy short exposure, Who are you trading against? You're trading against the pool. So, your participant can be anyone. Your participant can be maybe a retail, maybe a professional trader, maybe an institution. It really depends on what side of the trade. So if you go to the IPOR app right now and go to swaps, you can go to the swaps page and you can choose your long or short position. And that can be anyone. It can be an institution, it can be a retail, it can be an individual. And you really select it, if you want to take a directional position on the rates. But on the other side, there's the liquidity pool. So how this is made possible is you have people that are depositing stables based on the underlying IPOR rate that they want to underwrite. So for example, let's use the USDC case. So there's a USDC IPOR rate or a benchmark rate for IPOR. There are USDC depositors. So those USDC depositors, they put their USDC in the pool, right? And so this can be institution, this can be individual, this can be professional trader. And they get income in three ways. They're essentially service providers to the platform. So they earn when someone comes and takes a swap against the pool in that asset. They earn what's called SOAP, or the sum of all payoffs. That means that the pool underwrites both long and short positions, and the net outcome of those goes to the pool. And they also get asset management yield. So while the pool is sitting, while the USDC is sitting there idle, and it's not necessarily being paid out to the swap winners, it's going out to Aave, it's going out to Compound to earn this money market yield, right? So it has three different revenue streams where it's coming from. So, if you're a trader or you're a liquidity provider as a depositor, it can be anyone. Yeah, it just depends on what your participation is.
Yeah, nice. And I used the protocol a few times. I still didn't use with operation with Aave or Compound. I use it for speculation, for trading the direction of the interest rates, and it was very cool because I received the airdrop because it was using the platform. So, but I'm looking forward to use for more real use case, let's say. Speculation is also real depending on your point of view, but I expect to use for other purposes as well. And could you talk a little bit more about the team? You said there is another co-founder. Talk about the team and their experience. How many people are in the team currently?
Yeah, sure. So we're up to 17 people now, and it actually has a very, very somewhat Brazil origin story. Our chief scientist is Mauricio Hernandez. He's a PhD computer scientist and a statistician, graduate of the Universidade de São Paulo.
Oh, I studied in Universidade de São Paulo as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I'm not a computer scientist. I'm an electronic engineer. But it's the same university. Okay. Yeah.
Well, of course, the quality then.
Yeah.
So Mao, he actually lives in Tokyo. So he did I think his PhD in Tokyo. But he's Brazilian, and we had an early advisor on that was really helping out a lot. That's also it's also Brazilian and has a code name Alice. I won't reveal their identity, but another Brazilian, and actually we had a Brazilian design firm do the first iterations of the website. So we have some connection to Brazil.
Yeah. So two out of 17 employers are Brazilian.
Yeah.
Nice. Very cool.
So then also what we have 3 PhDs on staff right now, I believe. Yeah, 3 PhDs. So on the quant team, it's led by Mao, the chief scientist, and then we have 2 other guys that have over 20 years as quants in fixed income in TradFi. So this gives us the deep experience.
Yeah.
And the whole trick about blockchain is you have to limit the stuff that you can do on chain because it's expensive. I mean, you guys have dealt with Ethereum.
Yeah.
It's expensive. The more complex you make it, the more gas intensive, right? So you're really trying to find the balance between complexity and risk management, and then the ability to do it on chain, right? So this is kind of some of the magic behind IPOR. We just actually onboarded someone his name is Kostas or Konstantinos. He comes from over 15 years in hedge funds, and he's leading out the institutional and protocol business development. My co-founder Dimitar and I, we met he right now lives in Shanghai. He's originally from Bulgaria, and we met now 4 or 5 years ago. We didn't meet in Shanghai when we were both there. We met in Frankfurt. But we've been in this industry for a long time. He started in 2017. I started in 2011, right? So that's combined a good amount. That's like 17 years combined in crypto, which means in dog years, I guess we should be dead, or in crypto years also. But he was on the VC side. He comes from investment banking. He also ran 2 exchanges, right? And actually, one of the big innovations that we launched recently, Power Tokens, is a new tokenomics primitive, and that's his creation, right? So if you think, I'm very much more focused on the macro functioning, and he is much more specialized on the economics, not only inside of the platform, but the tokenomics. So Power Tokens are Dimitar's invention. Yeah. On the engineering side, we're I believe 8 strong right now, and so we're led by Wukash. So I know him for about actually 7-8 years. We met in Shanghai, and he brought with him a couple of guys that come from enterprise software development that have we're talking 13-15 years in enterprise software development. And these guys are really the core of the engineering team. So we have 8 guys on engineering. I think, let's see, 2 specialized along smart contract, 2 on the front end side, one product designer, UI UX, 3 on the infrastructure and the data side, and then Wukash leading the product management. And then we also have our CMO, Vlad. He's been involved since 2013 in crypto. So we have a very strong mix of, let's call it OG crypto blood, very deep traditional finance experience, and then I think some very innovative approaches and very strong software engineering. And so what we like to do is be really balanced and have experts kind of from every field along their unique discipline. So I hope that comes out in the protocol, where you have not only from, the UI, which should be as simple and as intuitive as possible, to having something complex on the smart contract side, which can perform these, very complex derivatives math. But on the infrastructure side, it's also scalable and secure. So we focus trying to build the complete package.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see the background, that it's a mix of computer scientists, OGs from crypto, and also a lot of people with experience in TradFi. I think it's a little bit different than the first DeFi summer protocols. For example, if you look at Uniswap, the Uniswap founder, he was a mechanical engineer. It was inventing the Uniswap that is a big success. So I'm seeing that I don't know if it's going to be a trend, but the new DeFi generation has more integration with traditional finance. It's very interesting. And you were saying about the Power token. So I know you launched it recently in 2023, the IPOR token. Could you give an explanation about the IPOR token? What is the utility?
Yeah, so I mean, the IPOR token is the native token of the platform, but really the Power token has the utility. So, okay, in brief, Power tokens it's an architectural concept for tokenomics, right? So what does it do? It takes your protocol token, it creates a standard version of that, which is called the Power token, and that Power token can be delegated to different models. So first of all, this architecture for the token, it makes it really useful and modular so that different protocols can adapt it to their needs. So we hope that other protocols will really use this power token architecture to adapt to their needs. So for example, what do you do inside of IPOR? So you take your IPOR token and you stake it for a power token. This power token can be delegated to different modules. So one of the modules you see right now is the liquidity mining module. So liquidity mining, what happens? If you're providing liquidity, you stake that liquidity, and then you're into the rewards contract, and then you're available to get or eligible to get rewards. On the other side, you have the power tokens. If you delegate your power tokens to that liquidity, that staked liquidity mining, then you get a boost, right? So you might know boost from something like V-Curve, or you might know some boost similar like Badger DAO, for example. It has shades of that, but it's quite different in its construction, right? But that's the basics. So where does power token architecture, for example, let's talk about the specifics in IPOR. So you have 3 different liquidity pools right now: USDC, USDT, and DAI. So if you are just a one pool staker, then you're going to want to delegate your IPOR, your power IPOR across that one pool. That's easy. But what happens if you're providing for 2 assets or for all 3? Well, this is where the game theory comes in, and you can take that power token and you can delegate, or your power token balance, and you can delegate it to the different rewards modules, and you can play with this, right? You can see that, you know, one pool is suboptimal, or one pool, you know, is yielding more rewards or fewer rewards, and you can change your delegation between those pools, right? So this is part of the modular architecture that makes it very interesting. So you're essentially using like a single power IPOR position, and use it modularly to manage your optimal rewards across 2 or 3 different pools. Let's say, you know, 3, 4, 5 pools get added on. You can still use the same kind of modular system. On the other side, you can use it, like, for example, on the governance system. So you can delegate your power IPOR to governance. And so again, this modular system, that one of these modules is the governance system. And this is going to be really interesting and important for IPOR in the future. So, you know, to bring in the kind of the community will be, it will be community run, like the IPOR and the IPOR DAO. And this is decisions like, okay, so right now the IPOR index, it uses Aave and Compound as inputs. But what happens when it's going to use another money market? What happens when it's going to ingest data from another chain or a rollup or an L2? You know, how does this IPOR go to evolve? You know, how do we get an IPOR 1 month rate, 2 month rate, 3 month rate? How do we spin up an IPOR for a new asset, like, for example, ETH? How do we reweight the different mechanisms on the interest rate derivatives? These are all things that you'll be able to vote on using the power tokens in the governance module.
Yeah. So today the IPOR token and the power tokens, they are intended to incentive the liquidity providers, and in the future will be used for governance, right? They're yes. Not. It's not possible to have governance yet.
That's correct.
Okay. So, is there any for someone that only has the IPOR token? Is there any idea to have a single staking or a real yield kind of feature in the? Do you expect something like this, or it's not in the plan?
Well, right now, the only way to actually earn IPOR, power IPOR on power IPOR is to delegate some liquidity. So even if you delegate just a little bit, then you will be eligible for reward, right? Mm-hmm. So the other modules that can be built are still in discussion, right? They're still in design and planning. So they can be interesting also on the governance side, but this is still very much in design. So if you're talking about near term, liquidity mining is the only way to earn off staked IPOR, but in the future there could be multiple ways.
Okay. And today, as the IPOR is in its own Ethereum mainnet, so when you're talking about you're using Aave and Compound, it's only their liquidity on Ethereum, right? You don't use from other other chains like Arbitrum or Avalanche? It's only Ethereum mainnet right now, right?
Only Ethereum mainnet, and actually only the V2 constructions of those.
Only the
because
V2.
it's the most liquid.
Okay.
This is at the moment, right? But some of this is also, very interesting for governance, right? Right now, both Compound V3 and Aave V3 is just launched on mainnet on Ethereum. So when do these become, what's the minimum liquidity that they have to be considered inputs? Are they automatically considered secure because the V2s are ingested, right? So this, I can answer this would be an interesting one for decentralized governance.
Yeah. And so there are also, I found it very interesting solutions like the from the layer 0 labs that they have Stargate, and I've seen some ideas to have like unified liquidity for governance as well, because maybe in 2 years, maybe there are more liquidity on Aave and Compound and other protocols in layer 2s than in Ethereum mainnet. So are you thinking to integrate the liquidities at this moment, or it's not a priority?
It could be. So think of IPOR as a very risk-averse protocol in a couple of different ways. So number one, the IPOR rate you can consider maybe a risk-free rate in DeFi. Risk-free in this case termed as over-collateralized, or we can also say capital inefficient, but it's proven to be fairly safe. Of course, there's different risks, there's technological risks, but it's the closest proxy that we have to a risk-free rate in DeFi right now. There are other higher yielding opportunities, but they come with their different risks, right? So you can consider the IPOR a risk-free benchmark. And if you're going to get returns, you have to benchmark those returns against the IPOR rate to understand, is it worth the rate of return for the risk that I'm putting, right? So it's a very low risk protocol in general. The derivatives market underpins the stock market, which is why it's on Ethereum L1, because that's where the most liquid credit markets are. And then, to be honest, personally, I'm very scared of bridges. They are a necessity, but they're the easiest way. Right now they're one of the easiest ways to lose funds. So we're starting out very conservative in the construction of the protocol. Also, you see this asset management derives some yield from the native Ethereum L1. And I didn't find it from a protocol construction perspective worthwhile to open up the pool to a potentially 100% loss across a bridge to get marginal gains on the return, right? So that's for the V1. As these develop, they will be considered, for different constructions of the IPOR protocol and maybe different parts. And definitely cross-chain is in the cards for the IPOR. It's just a matter of when.
Nice. And I think you are in the right direction, thinking let's be conservative and do one step at a time. And also it's very interesting, and I would like to emphasize for who is watching. One thing that Luciano and I have been talking about IPOR is that it's a low risk protocol. It's for hedge, because some people see the swap and see the 1,000 leverage. Sometimes see, oh, this is crazy. It looks like some degen thing, but it's not the way it works. So it's a low risk protocol. I think it's very interesting you emphasize that. And what can you say about the roadmap or future improvements that you're planning for the IPOR?
Yeah, well, we have let's call it a V1 protocol, right? We have the spot rates, and what we would like to turn these into is, you get the IPOR USDC 1 month, 3 month, 6 month rate. So you can start to forecast your cost of capital into the future. And this is how we start building the yield curve, which is essentially, what's the cost of capital or return on deposits into the future. And once we have that, we can start working to longer term debt instruments, right? We'll start to see an extension of the duration of the swaps. Right now, it's capped at 4 weeks. and we'll get to 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, but really going 1 month at a time, right? A couple other things that we're discussing are some different fixed rates, either fixed income on the lending side or fixed rate borrow on the borrowing side. And that gives some of this base functionality of interest rate derivatives, coupled with money market protocols. And then we'll have some other derivatives that are coming out. So it's this whole suite of different instruments that will reference the IPOR to really build out this yield curve, to really build out this this base layer. One, the data layer to understand, this cost of capital or opportunity in the future, the instruments to actually take advantage of that, or to speculate or to arbitrage on that.
Yeah, wow, very nice. Darren, thank you very much for coming here in the channel and talk about history of IPOR, your history as well, and all the future expectations for the protocol. I'm very excited about IPOR. Is there any other thing you'd like to mention or leave your final message?
Yeah, I mean, come be a part of the community. Come be like Luciano. Come learn, help others to learn, and also get involved in the long-term governance, because this is, if you're talking about reimagining financial systems, if we look at something, like the LIBOR, which you had individual bankers that were manipulating for their own personal profit. Look on the other side of DeFi. We're trying to create public goods that are transparent, that are auditable, that are useful for the entire community. So, if you're interested in these things, I would definitely get involved in the community. If you don't speak English, we have some great IPORians that can help along in the Portuguese channel. And yeah, I mean, really happy to see this community growing. We saw with the start of the liquidity mining in the IPOR tokens, we saw the liquidity grow up from a TVL of about 2.5 million to around 15 million today. And depends on when you guys open this recording, but maybe it's grown. It's pretty amazing to see the growth, but we're really excited because we're at the start of the protocol's utility.
Yeah. Wow. Very good. And thank you again for coming here. And obrigado, Luciano, por trazer o Darren. Quer deixar mais algum comentário, Luciano? Comentários finais aí?
Não, principalmente, muito obrigado para o Darren por ter aceitado participar da live. Para a gente é muito importante, porque a gente acredita muito no protocolo IPOR, e é interessante ouvir do fundador quais são os planos para o projeto. E parabéns pela iniciativa da comunidade. Eu gosto muito de participar, achei muito interessante. E a gente vai seguir compartilhando e falando do protocolo aqui para o pessoal do Brasil.
Maravilha. Obrigado a todos.
Muito obrigado.
Faça parte da Academia Cripto, o melhor ambiente para o seu aprendizado. Primeiro link na descrição do vídeo. NFTFY. Aqui, entusiastas de NFT se conectam com oportunidades, comunidades, curadores, compra coletiva, acessibilidade.